Okay, I'm just gonna start.
Yeah, it started.
Okay. Okay, so first of all, thank you all for coming.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having us.
For those of you who are new, I don't know if you saw my other video, but I like to say this in the beginning that I'm not a rabbanit. So if you have some questions and I don't know the answer, like that's gonna happen often because I kind of don't try to like come off as somebody that knows everything in the religion. I just kind of go with my experiences and what I find interesting, and I kind of like to share it. So that's kind of why I put it also on social media, because I think it applies to a lot of people that are not necessarily religious. They're just, kind of like us in the same kind of level. So that's originally why I wanted to start these classes. And so basically, so we're on the third day of Hanukkah, and it's only fitting that we kind of understand what Hanukkah is all about. And I kind of didn't want to do this class about Hanukkah because I was like, it's going to be this whole cliche, like festival of light, and there's light at the end of the tunnel, which it is what Hanukkah is about, but it's a lot more than that. So I kind of wanted to dive into it. So most holidays have a theme around them. So we know that in Pesach it's a lot about finding freedom after 400 years of slavery. With Sukkot it's about uniting with a family and Hashem being present in a temporary dwelling, which is the Sukkah. And we also have Purim, which is really a lot about our identity and about being happy. But specifically Hanukkah, and this is my favorite holiday, it's a lot about he's like pressing on me. It's a lot about holiday of hope. So it's really kind of just finding light at the end of the tunnel when sometimes we have these challenges and we're like, I can't do this, like there's no way. It reminds me of my 3 months when I was nauseous. I was like calling my husband every day, I'm like, I'm not doing this, and he's like, but you don't have a choice, like there's nothing. So you just it kind of helps you to know you don't have a choice, you just got to do it. Same thing with labor, God willing, so hopefully I'll have that in mind. So there's something interesting about, so first of all, we know that the miracle of Hanukkah was that the olive lasted for 8 days instead of 1. They found only 1 can. They actually had a lot of cans that they found, but because the Greeks already had touched it and there wasn't the signature of the Kohen Gadol that stamped the olive, they only had 1 can left that wasn't touched, which was hidden, and that was essentially the miracle. But I wanted to start with the fact that when we have olive oil, we don't make a bracha on olive oil. I didn't know that. I actually learned it today. And we don't make a bracha on it because it doesn't taste like anything. So if you just have like a spoon of olive oil, I don't think anybody does that, but if you do, actually. You did? So what does it taste like?
It's like there's a taste.
It's very minor.
Yeah.
It's not like tasting vinegar or like balsamic when you put it on a sauce. Like if you put olive oil, you'll add something else like salt, pepper, to kind of give it a little bit more flavor. So olive oil itself, we don't ever say bracha on it. And it's basically in comparison to our challenges sometimes, because when we have a challenge, sometimes we look at the challenge and we say, there's no taste in this. Like, why do I have this challenge? Like, you tell Hashem, like, I keep Shabbat, I keep kosher, I work on myself every day, but I have this challenge in front of me, and I'm like, but it doesn't have a taste, it doesn't have a meaning. So what am I supposed to do now? Like, where do I go from here? And basically, the holiday of Hanukkah is really meant to give us hope in the times where we have those challenges, where we look up to Hashem and we say, I'm really doing my best, and I don't have hope right now. Like, there's nothing else that I can do. And I do everything in my power. I pray every day. And it didn't work. It doesn't work, and you don't realize why this is happening. A perfect example, today I was carrying the box of suganiyot from my car. And it was like really heavy, and I park in the roof. So like I have to go down the stairs and I have to like carry, and there's no one, like literally no one around for me to be like I need help. And you're not supposed to like really carry anything, like especially now. But I was like, whatever, like I'm like praying to Hashem. I'm like, I'm doing this for like the shiur tonight. Like, Hashem, please help me. Like, let me find someone, somebody to come. And obviously, and no one came, of course. But sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And in my head, I was like, I just don't understand. Like, why is it so hard for Hashem to be like, send me someone to open the door? I'm like, I don't get it. It's a really minor, example of what these challenges mean. But, it's just like things happen sometimes and you're like, where's the logic? So to start answering this question, we're going to go back to where the Torah began. The Torah began with a pasuk, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, v'haaretz hayta tohu vavohu v'choshech al pnei tehom. So in English, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. In the earth there was chaos and darkness across an abyss, I think that's how you say it. Basically, abyss, I think, is basically an empty hole. And what they're trying to say is that the first sentence in the Torah starts with God creating darkness. He creates heavens and the earth, but he says that the earth had so much chaos that there wasn't a division like we see now. We only, in the beginning, saw darkness and chaos. This was the beginning of creation of everything. That was the first thing God created. So I'm thinking to myself, why would God create that first out of everything? He creates obscurity first, like not having clarity first. That was the first thing. So darkness is really a metaphor for us today because, we have challenges where we're like unclear about the definition or the meaning, like I said. So it represents that obscurity in the world that Hashem created that we just don't understand. So, and once I remember I read in Pirkei Avot, there was somebody who explains like what is happiness. And I'm always like, I'm like such a philosopher sometimes, but I'm always like, what is really happiness? Because our lives are up, down, up, down, up, down. So you're like, you can't really be happy all the time. And everyone's like searching for this like happiness, but we don't really know what it is. Like everybody will give you a different answer. So
is there an answer?
So this is one answer that I loved, and they said it's being certain of everything, and it's not having doubts. Meaning every single thing that you do in your life, you're certain that it's the right thing. And I think that's one of like the main things that I would love to have. It's like waking up in the morning, being sure of exactly, why I'm doing something, or being sure that Hashem is giving me exactly what I need, and not to be complaining of anything. And I think that's like the highest level of happiness that's really hard to achieve. But I really think that's one of the definitions of happiness. So the Torah continues after saying that God created... Are you okay?
Sorry.
When God created chaos, the sentence right after it says, Vayomer Elokim yehi or vayehi or. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. Right after the whole chaos and the obscurity and the darkness comes the light. He could have said, I'm dividing the heavens and the earth now, and then there's light, and then there's everything else in the creation. But right after that sentence, he said, and then he created light. So when we talk about the light of Hanukkah specifically, it's important to understand that we're not talking about the physical light. Of course, we do the physical mitzvah of lighting the candles of Hanukkah, but the light of Hanukkah specifically, it's a lot more about a spiritual light. So why? Because Hanukkah is a miracle of 8 days. So remember the number 8 because I'm going to bring it up a lot, but when we're talking numbers, especially in Torah, every digit means something. So number 7 means nature, everything that's natural, everything that's standard. So for example, there's the 7 days of creation, there's the 7 days of Nidah. So everything that's natural in its course is the number 7. When we talk about the number 8, it's only logical that it's something above the natural, meaning that it's either supernatural, spiritual, something that's elevated. So when we talk about number 8, we're really talking about the miracle of Hanukkah, because what are miracles? It's something that's out of reality, that's not realistic, that you can't even imagine it happening in the world. Like the small can of oil that couldn't last 7 days, and it did, 8 days, sorry. And defeating a huge army, which was the second miracle, which was when the Hashmonaim, specifically it was Matityahu and his 5 kids, they fought against an army of 1 million, like 1 million soldiers of Greeks. And they won, of course. But it's really interesting because when you think about what the Greeks stood for, what are the Greeks known for? Do you know? Specifically, like their nation, they're known for philosophers. Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, they were all Greeks. They were very into philosophy and finding logic and pattern. So when the Greeks originally when they were living with the Jews, they had a problem with the Jews because everything to them had to make sense. So when they saw the Jewish culture and they were like, they're doing Shabbat and they're doing Kashrut, they're like, what is that? They were like, we don't understand. So it kind of threatened their belief. So they couldn't live together. So what did they want to do? They wanted to exploit the Jews. That was essentially the era of Hanukkah. And that's why they really didn't like the Jews, because they were like, they think they're superior. They're doing all these things that we don't understand. It's just not logical. It doesn't fit in what we believe in. And this is why they wanted to originally exploit the Jews. So a perfect example, by the way, is when they were fighting against the Jews. So originally, when they were in battle, they saw Matityahu and the five kids. I mean, they were older, but they were his children. And they said, okay, there's no way they're going to win. I mean, it's literally 5 people. They're not like armed. They never went to battle. Like for them, logically, it was a good army means good training, having good commanders, having the right artillery, having the right weapons. They were like, of course we're going to win. You know, it was just not even a question. So if we backtrack, during that time, I think I already said that. Yeah, so when we talk about Antiochus, which was the, I think the king back then, essentially the ruler of the Greeks, he wasn't, if you were to compare, like for example, Hitler and Haman, they wanted to eliminate us completely, meaning they didn't want Jewish blood on this earth at all. They wanted to kill everyone no matter what. So if any Jew would go to Hitler and say, okay, I'm converting to whatever religion, he would still want to kill them. But Antiochus wasn't the same. He didn't want to kill the Jews. He just wanted to make sure that their culture would be eliminated and that they would start assimilating with the Greeks. So he didn't necessarily want blood. He just wanted them to kind of like admit that, you know, the religion was non-existent and that they would change their culture. So that was the main difference. Let me see. Okay, and then the number 8, again, when we go back to number 8, it comes from the word Chashmonaim, which were the ones who fought against the Greeks. Shmone, Chashmonaim, and then also Shemen comes from the word Shmone. So I thought that was interesting. But today, more than anything, this number represents us as Jews, I think, because, yeah, and I'll tell you why. Because, like we said, 8, it really represents everything that's above nature. So when we talk about other nations or other people that we see, we kind of like, we can get those energies when we know somebody's not Jewish and when we know someone's Jewish. There's like a difference, there's an energy, there's a different vibration, and it's because we're number 8, meaning we're all comprised of something that's a lot more than physical. There's spiritual in each and every one of us, and there's holiness in each and every one of us. And it's really important to understand that, because everything that we do is comprised of something more than the physical. So literally everything that we do, when we drink, this is just drinking from a cup, but when you do a bracha, you're making it holy. When you do the 7 days of Nida, you're purifying yourself for your husband. But if somebody was to see you going underwater into a mikveh, they would be like, you're crazy. So it's really, for us, it's purifying, and it's bringing holiness into our lives wherever we go. And it seeps into our behavior, it seeps into our character. Like, holiness really is all around us, and sometimes we don't see it, but we're really made up of the number 8. There are perfect examples in the Torah of where there were such miracles. So for example, Sarah, who was 90 years old, she gave birth. Another example was David and Goliath. I don't know if you guys know the story, but Goliath was a huge giant. And when he went to fight with Goliath, so like, can you imagine, literally like maybe the size of this building versus somebody like you and I, and he was all armed, this giant was armed, had all the, battlefield equipment, and David comes with a stick, and everyone's like laughing, they're like, you're joking, right? And he's like, I come in the name of God. This is what he said, I come in the name of Hashem. And he ended up winning the battle. So when we act in all these situations, and we really believe that we are number 8 and that we're above the natural, then everything is possible. It means that, somebody who still hasn't found a zivug, and they're like, in their 40s or 50s, it's still possible. You can still defy nature. Somebody who still can't have kids, you can still defy nature. Somebody who for some reason is just in a deep depression or deep anxiety, they can still defy nature against all odds. People who are, stage 4 cancer in the hospital beds, you can still defy all odds because we're number 8, we're not 7. So everything that we do is beyond reality. Everything that we do can be beyond realistic. Today we also see miracles in Israel, and this is not, has nothing to do with our history. We see it today, where they have shows of people in Bnei Brak, like big religious families, 10, 15 kids, like all in one house, and they ask them, how much money do you make? And they say 3,000, 4,000 shekels, and they have 10 kids. I don't know about you, but 3,000 shekels pays for my toilet paper and maybe something else in my house. And they pay for everything. And they're 10 kids. And for me, that's one of the biggest miracles. How do they survive? Of course the kids help each other, but you need to have money. You know what I mean? And especially in Israel. We're not moving to Israel yet, and Israel is my favorite place because it's expensive. So I can't imagine them being able to live like that and being called normal. So I'm sure people who saw it from the outside, they would be like, what? They would be like, this is not normal. So, we see the number 8 everywhere we go. And I remember somebody came to me one time and they said, what's Israel like? I've never been there. They're not Jewish. So I said, yeah, I used to live there. And they were like, okay, what's it like? Can you explain? I'm like, not really, but they have an aggressive mentality. They're very in survival mode because they live with their enemies, because the Arabs live, in our country. They're always in debt. They're very aggressive when they talk to you. They're, the houses aren't so nice. It looks kind of not a third world country, but it's not the most modern place in the world. So they look at me and they're like, why would you ever want to live in a place like that? And I look at them, I'm like, I can't even explain it to them. But it's because when we land in Israel, you feel the holiness. It's something unexplainable. I see people who are not even Jewish and they land in the airport and they kiss the floor and you're like, what the hell are they doing? But really it's because they feel the kedusha, they feel the holiness that you can't find anywhere else in the world. So at the end of the day, the Jews are living among enemies every day. We're living among enemies every day, and we still survive, and we're still thriving. And to me, that's the biggest miracle of all. So sometimes we go through our days and we say, this is just a normal day, but it's not, because when you think about all the different miracles that happen that we're not really aware of, but they're there, that's when you really see the light, specifically the light of Hanukkah, and that God really exists in everything. And another thing, and this is what I was explaining to you. I was at work and they had 3 company lunches that week. And of course, during that time, I was way too tired to make myself lunch. So I would just bring crackers and all these things. So it wasn't a real lunch. And then comes the pizza guy and I'm opening the door and you get a whiff of the pizza. Or the next day you get a whiff of whatever they had, mashed potatoes with whatever they brought. And they look at me and they're like, obviously you're gonna eat, right? And I'm like, no, I can't eat it because it's not kosher. And they look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, no, it's against my religion. And to them it's but it's normal, you're hungry, you're pregnant, of course you're gonna eat. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And they're like, well, what do you mean? And it's I really couldn't explain it to them, how strong my beliefs were to have so much discipline to be you're gonna have your crackers instead of that amazing meal. And somebody else came to me and said how do you do it, especially when you're pregnant and your mouth is salivating and the baby's hungry and you're having crackers on the side while everyone's having a,
she craves it.
and when you see when you see a buffet in front of you, people don't really understand. They're like, how could you be that strong against your natural primitive impulses? So when they said, how do you do it? I said, I don't. It's not a choice for me. It's not I look at the pizza and I'm it's calling my name, I gotta do it. That's not what I think. It's not even a question in my mind. I'm it's not okay, you could do it just this once, God will forgive you. It's this is just not my, it's not my thing. I don't do this and it's not even an option. So once you have that, just like I said, you know, when you're in labor and you're like, it's not even an option, I gotta do it. It's the same thing. When you don't give yourself the choice and you're like, I'm connected with Hashem, this is the type of life that I want, and this is the certainty that you have, which comes with the happiness. This is where you have that connection that's stronger than anything. It's stronger than any pizza. It's stronger than any non-kosher donut or whatever it is. That's your favorite food. And it's just to show you that above the miracle is really just knowing where to find that certainty that everything comes from Hashem, number one, and that you're not alone when you have those challenges and you see just darkness and you're like, I just don't know what to do anymore. Keep praying. It doesn't matter if it's been a year. It doesn't matter if it's been 2 years. Maybe God wants something else from you. But prayer is also everything, because it's like Moshe Rabbeinu when he wanted to go into Israel. You know, he wasn't allowed to go. He was punished, so he couldn't go into the land of Israel. And he kept praying and he kept praying. And Hashem went to him and he said, I need you to stop praying, because we're all at one point I'm gonna have to let you in. And he's like, and this is not what I want. It's to show you the power of prayer. But more than that, it's really just to show you that nothing happens for just like that. It's not by coincidence. Everything that happens is just for a reason, and every challenge that we have is because you can handle it, and you have a different challenge because you specifically can handle it and maybe I can't. And that's just how the world works. And the problem is that we start comparing. Why do I have this challenge, but I've always been faithful to Hashem, and why does this one have this challenge? But it's really, you have to just focus on your own challenges and say, okay, like this is my obscurity, this is my darkness right now, but I know there's going to be light. You know, the life is like this, up, down. So if you're at the bottom, you're only going to go up. So you have to understand there will always be light at the end of the tunnel. We just have to believe it, and we have to be certain of it. And when you have such deeply embedded roots and beliefs, nothing can challenge it, like I said. So when it comes to living today with our challenges and difficulties, we just have to remember that we're number 8. We're not number 7, where every other nation, you know, is the same. And, you know, I see so many people, they're like, I don't know what to do. Like, my mom's in the hospital, or my dad is sick and this, and they don't have the religion. They have nowhere to go. So what do? They rely on the doctors. They rely on the medicine. They rely on everything that's limited, while we have this whole big superpower that we don't take, unfortunately, advantage of sometimes. And we think this is the last resort, but it should be the first thing that you should do, is prayer, not go to the doctor and get checked. It's, okay, let me pray, and then I'll go to the doctor if I don't feel good in a week from now. And that's really like how we should deal with every experience, with every challenge. So this is the idea of Hannukah. We're always fighting physical wars, but the one tool that we have that every other nation doesn't is that we have the spiritual tools in order to fight the physical. So instead of doing the normal things like worrying, panicking, taking deep breaths, and trying to meditate, which sometimes works for me, it's not the most fulfilling. Meaning that if you find another way to handle the stress and handle the pressure, instead of just worrying and just taking the time to open a siddur, you'll see that you'll feel much better. I mean, I have a huge fear of flight for some reason. Like, I don't know why, it just came out of nowhere for like, it's been 2 years now. Yeah, because of there was. Why? Yeah, I had like one really bad experience like 2 years ago, 1 year ago.
Mm-hmm. Welcome to the past 20 years of my life.
And I was like, I can't get on a plane ever again. And I'm like, of course I'm going to travel, because I love traveling. Not more than I did, but I love traveling. And at one point I was like, okay, I'm just going to open the book, read the Tehillim. And I was so calm after like 3, it was just, really? Yeah, I like look at myself, I'm like, how did I do that? And I tried like every meditation. I like downloaded Headspace, I bought the membership, like nothing worked. Just started like praying, did a few psukim, and I said, if I'm speaking to Hashem right now and I'm seeking something that's beyond, you know, what is the situation right now, then maybe that's where I got my salvation. And it really was where I got it. So now like every time I'm on the plane and I'm freaking out, I'm like, I read some Tehillim and like it goes away. Hopefully, I hope that works for you also.
But can non-Jews also, like, they have their religion, but they still believe in God and spirituality and prayer, so can they also seek it in that way?
Yeah, Of course. I mean, also that we have that idea, which is itbodedut, which is you're not opening a siddur, you're just talking to Hashem. I do that in the morning, but when I'm driving to work, because I don't have any other time, and sometimes people look at me and they're like, is she on the phone or is she just talking to herself? And I'm like, no, I'm talking to God. It happens a lot, and it's like so fulfilling because it's like somebody that I think knows you best, and it's like I get my answers. Like everything that I ask for, I get my answers. It's like a perfect example was I wanted to get a doula for the birth, and I met up with her, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna take her. Like, so I prayed, and I was like, okay, like, you know, give me clarity. Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. This is a crazy, it's a crazy story. And I said, I don't know if I'm gonna take her, babe. I don't know, it's expensive. This. He's like, I think you should take her. So I said, I don't know, we'll see. Like, I'm gonna leave it up to Hashem.
A girl that calmed you while you gave birth.
Prostitute or a midwife?
So it's kind of like a midwife, but they call it doula. It's like the new trending thing now.
You're giving
It's
birth
just
at
you
home.
breathing
No,
strategy.
No, I'm giving birth in the hospital, but she basically kind of like reinforces what you want as a birth plan. So for example, if I want to do a natural, she's like there to kind of reinforce that.
No, but she,
Because-
doula was a
no, but
midwife.
she doesn't actually
Yeah.
do it. That's
So
really-
no, it's
She
like,
teaches you like breathing techniques, like blah blah blah.
Oh, it's like an assistant.
No, not even the coach. She's
An
your
assistant,
birthing
go get me
assistant.
coffee.
she advocates for you.
Kind of, yeah.
She's your
While
advocate.
giving birth.
Yeah, but she doesn't
your
give
coach.
birth for
Because
you.
when-
She advocates like, no, this is not how she wants it. This is how she
It's like
wants
an
it.
Exactly.
She's helping you.
Because also when you
I thought it was
Gives you
only
actual-
I thought it was giving it at home. Like,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
She loves to
That
go to
too.
the
I
hospital.
used to do it in
Are you gonna do it?
You think you have a
No,
middle.
it's not.
So I'll tell you the story.
Yeah.
So okay, so I prayed and I was like, okay, like, you know, I and this is like one of the best things I love doing is I just transfer my stress to Hashem. Like I prayed for you, like I prayed to you, and you know, now hopefully you'll send me clarity. And another half of the battle is also like identifying the signs, but to me they're very clear. So my example was I went to Zach the baker, and this is when I saw a really good friend of mine from a long time ago. Like we're like, I haven't seen her in like 5 years.
When?
Yeah, Zach the baker.
When?
It was like maybe a month ago, I want to say. So I see her there, and she was and she was there with her her sister who was 9 months pregnant. And I'm like, how are you? How's everything? You know, we're talking and we're catching up while I'm waiting for my food. And I told her, I asked her, I'm like, is this your first baby or second baby? So she said, it's my second baby. So I said, oh wow, how was your first pregnancy? How was your first birth? She said, everything was amazing. I'm like, really? So you did natural, like normal, like or epidural? She said, no, I did completely natural. I'm like, no way, your first birth, usually like it's the second or the third. She said, yeah, and you know who? Thanks to who? And I said, who? She said, this doula, her name is Maya. And she's Israeli, and this is the one I want to take. And she was like, she's amazing, like you have to take her. And like, I was 100% sure I was going to get an epidural. And when, you know, I started training with her, and during the hospital, during the birth, she was like, she gave me so much strength that I was like, you know, it was natural in and out, and she was like, she told me she was great. Sign number 1. Then I went to the synagogue across my parents, not here. I usually go here, but there was a time where I just went across. And I see the rabbanit of the synagogue, and she goes, oh my God, congratulations, you're pregnant. We got talking, and she said, you know, I used to be a doula. I don't practice anymore. But I know someone who's really, really good, and you should really like talk to her. And she's like, she's gonna like make or break your birth. And I said, really, who? I didn't say the name yet because I wanted to know if she knew the exact person. She said, her name is Maya, and she's Israeli. She's really nice, and she describes her to me. I'm like, okay, no, there's no way.
We're all getting mine.
So she describes her to me, and I'm like, it just doesn't make sense. So I'm like, okay, whatever. Third person. So this is the second sign.
No.
Yeah, and then I spoke to another girl, and I forgot where this was at. I'm not exactly sure, but I remember there was a girl, but I didn't really know her so well. I knew her through a friend, and we were just talking, and she said, yeah, like I had this amazing doula, like you don't even know, like she really changed my life. I said, what's her name? Maya. So I was like, I called her up, I'm like, okay, I'm taking you, I want to sign the contract, like I didn't even ask, no questions asked. I'm like, okay, Hashem, I get it, like I'm gonna get Maya. So basically it's to show you that these things really, Hashem comes through when you need him.
He really does.
So pretty much the idea of Hanukkah is that we should fight physical wars with the spiritual. Oh, I think always. But sometimes, of course, there are things that take away our energy and we have stress and we have anxiety, and it's really hard to handle everything. But when we remember that there's literally one person, well, it's not a person, but it's Hashem that manages everything that you do, every single person that you meet, the luck that you'll have, the kids that you'll have, everything is Him. So why not go to Him first before going to the doctors or before going to the doulas? Go to Him first, and then see if you get your answer. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I thought it was going to be longer, but